Peace and blessings, beloved soul, for you have not arrived at this moment by accident or coincidence, but by a quiet, precise, and divine summons that has been echoing through the inner chambers of your spirit long before your conscious mind could name it. Close your eyes for a moment and allow the external world to soften into the background, becoming nothing more than a distant hum, while your awareness gently turns inward. Feel the breath as it enters your lungs, steady and intentional, a sacred life force placed within you by the Creator of all things, sustaining you not only physically but spiritually. You are standing at the threshold of a profound realization, one that is sobering yet beautiful, deeply personal yet universally sacred, an awakening to the person God designed you to be before the world had the chance to interfere. For years, perhaps even decades, you may have felt like a fragmented mirror, reflecting fragments of expectations that were never truly yours, trying to assemble an identity from societal pressure, relational wounds, generational patterns, and the quiet scars of past trauma. You learn to adapt, to perform, to survive, often losing sight of the original design beneath the layers. But today, the great architect is calling you back to the blueprint that was written before fear, rejection, or confusion ever touched your life. Understand this clearly. This is not a journey of becoming something new, nor is it a frantic race towards self-improvement. It is a sacred process of unbecoming everything that was never you to begin with, shedding false roles, outdated defenses, and borrowed identities that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. The chosen one often walks through seasons of deep isolation, not as punishment, but as preparation, because in the stillness of that solitude, a masterpiece is quietly being refined. You are transitioning from the survival version of yourself, the one who had to stay alert, guarded, emotionally armored, and hyper-aware of danger, into the divine version of yourself, which is rooted, peaceful, discerning, and spiritually sovereign. This shift does not happen overnight, nor does it announce itself loudly. It is slow, deliberate, and precise, unfolding moment by moment, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. Even now, as you listen, something within you is realigning, loosening its grip on old patterns while gently anchoring into truth. The fear that once drove you is being replaced by clarity. The tension that once defined you is dissolving into trust, and the noise of external validation is giving way to inner authority. As we remain together in this sacred inner space, we begin to peel back the layers of ego, conditioning, and worldly illusion, not with force, but with compassion and awareness. Beneath those layers, 7 foundational pillars of your divine transformation stand waiting to be recognized, activated, and embodied, not as abstract ideas, but as living truths that will anchor you into the life, identity, and spiritual authority you were always meant to carry. Point 1. The architecture of divine silence and internal sanctuary. The first pillar of your transformation is the construction of an internal sanctuary through the architecture of silence, and this pillar is far more profound than the world ever taught you to believe. In earlier chapters of your life, silence may have felt unsettling, even threatening, as though the absence of noise exposed something fragile or unfinished within you. You may have filled every quiet moment with music, scrolling, conversation, or constant motion, because stillness forced you to confront yourself without filters. But now something has changed at a fundamental level. The person God is shaping understands that silence is not a lack of presence, but an environment of revelation. Silence is not empty. It is saturated with truth, insight, memory, and divine communication. It is the sacred ground where clarity forms. You're beginning to notice that you no longer feel compelled to explain yourself, entertain others, or drown out your own thoughts. You can sit alone in a room or walk beneath open skies and feel no urgency to reach for external stimulation. This is not withdrawal, it is alignment. Your nervous system is learning safety in stillness, and your spirit is learning discernment through quiet awareness. This is the sign that your internal sanctuary is being completed stone by stone. You are becoming comfortable in your own presence because you have discovered a deeper truth. Solitude is not separation. In that stillness, you sense companionship that does not speak loudly but remains constant. The Creator inhabits that silence not as a distant observer but as an intimate guide, shaping your inner world. This quiet marks the sobering of the mind, where emotional reactivity begins to dissolve and impulsive noise loses its grip. You are learning that not every thought deserves expression, not every emotion requires reaction, and not every invitation warrants your attendance. Your energy, once scattered, is now recognized as currency, finite, valuable, and sacred. Because of this awareness, you are no longer willing to spend it on conversations that drain you, environments that dull you, or relationships that demand you shrink or perform. Silence has become your boundary without confrontation and your strength without aggression. It is the fortress that protects your clarity from invasion. Within this sanctuary, healing occurs without spectacle. Old wounds surface gently and are resolved without drama. Patterns are revealed, lessons are integrated, and wisdom settles into your bones. This is where instructions arrive, not as frantic commands, but as calm certainties that feel undeniable once received. You begin to move differently because your decisions are no longer driven by urgency or fear, but by inner confirmation. The world may interpret your quiet as distance or detachment, but in truth, you are more connected than ever, connected to purpose, to discernment, and to divine order. As the noise of the world fades, the subtle guidance you once ignored grows stronger, steadier, and unmistakable. What once felt like a whisper now carries authority. This is the power of cultivated silence. It amplifies what truly matters and dissolves what never did. By embracing this pillar, you are allowing your life to be guided not by external pressure, but by internal alignment. Every step becomes intentional, every pause becomes instructive, every quiet moment becomes a meeting place between you and God. This is not a retreat. This is preparation. The silence you now honor is not an escape from life, but the foundation that ensures every future movement is precise, grounded, and divinely directed. Point 2, the refinement of discernment and the death of judgment. As you move deeper into the person God designed you to become, something subtle yet unmistakable begins to happen within you. Your inner vision sharpens, and your discernment is refined beyond anything you once knew. In earlier seasons of your life, you may have relied on judgment as a form of self-defense. You judged yourself harshly for past mistakes, replaying old decisions in your mind as if punishment could somehow bring redemption. You may have also judged others, not out of cruelty, but as a way to feel safe in an unpredictable world. Judgment felt like control. But the divine blueprint for your life does not call you to remain in that limited posture. God is elevating you into something far higher, pure spiritual discernment. Discernment is not emotional reaction, it is perception without turbulence. It is the ability to see clearly without being pulled into what you see. You are learning how to recognize the root of a situation without becoming entangled in its surface expressions. Where others only see behavior, you now sense the deeper cause. Where others react to words, you feel the unspoken energy beneath them. This is why you can now walk into a room and immediately perceive the atmosphere without anyone saying a word. You notice the unaligned intentions, the silent insecurities, and the subtle power dynamics at play, not so you can expose them, but so you can move wisely among them. Your spirit has become sensitive but not fragile. You understand that most people are not acting from malice. They are acting from unresolved wounds, unmet needs, and unconscious fears. And while you no longer allow those wounds to invade your peace, you also no longer feel compelled to confront or correct them. This marks a psychologically and spiritually grounded shift from a reactive state to an observant one. You are no longer pulled into emotional battles that drain your energy. Instead, you stand back with clarity. You have become a watcher, not passive, but deeply aware. A watcher sees patterns before they unfold. A watcher recognizes cycles before they repeat. This position grants you a calm authority that cannot be shaken, because you are no longer surprised by human behavior, betrayal, or hidden agendas. You expect clarity, not chaos. You expect truth to reveal itself in time. This is why your presence feels steady, even in unstable environments. You are learning that your role as a chosen one is not to argue with darkness, defend yourself endlessly, or prove your worth to anyone. Your role is to carry light, and light does not debate shadows or negotiate with confusion. Light simply exists, and by existing, it displaces everything that cannot remain in its presence. As this awareness settles into you, something else begins to happen. Your inner world grows quieter. The constant need to explain yourself fades. The urge to react dissolves. You no longer feel threatened by what you can see, because what you see no longer controls you. Starting now, your eyes are being washed clean, not physically, but spiritually. God is granting you vision that is free from emotional distortion. Vision that sees people as they truly are in the spirit, rather than how they present themselves in the flesh. This clarity brings with it a peace that cannot be manufactured or taken away, a peace that surpasses all understanding. You are not becoming colder. You are becoming clearer. You are not disconnecting. You are aligning. And in this alignment, you walk forward grounded, protected, and unshaken, fully aware of who you are and why you are here. Point 3, the sovereignty of spirit over worldly validation. The third pillar is the establishment of spiritual sovereignty, and this is where the inner architecture of your identity is fundamentally restructured. This stage marks the moment when the validation of the world begins to lose its gravitational pull over your heart, your decisions, and your sense of self. It is sobering because it reveals how deeply conditioned you once were to seek permission to exist. For much of your life, you may have unconsciously outsourced your worth to external authorities, parents whose approval felt like oxygen, peers whose acceptance determined your confidence, careers whose titles defined your value, or social status that acted as proof that you mattered. You were trained, subtly and relentlessly, to measure yourself through applause, affirmation, and visibility. The world taught you that to be seen was to be valuable, and to be ignored was to be diminished. But now, something irreversible is taking place within you. The person God is shaping is being gently but firmly stripped of these external crutches, not as punishment, but as preparation. You're discovering that as you align more precisely with your divine assignment, the noise of external validation grows quieter. Fewer people applaud, fewer people understand, fewer people stay. And instead of panic, you feel an unfamiliar calm. This is not numbness, this is sovereignty. You are becoming unhooked from the invisible matrix of human approval that once dictated your emotional weather. The likes no longer elevate you. The silence no longer wounds you. The opinions no longer steer you. This is the anointed state of being, not loud, not flashy, not desperate for recognition, but deeply rooted, internally anchored, and spiritually sealed. To be anointed is to be so saturated with the quiet approval of the Creator that the world's indifference feels like relief rather than rejection. You are learning in real time that when you are chosen by God, you are often unchosen by the world. And this is not a loss, but a protective mechanism. It is a divine filter designed to keep your heart clean, your motives clear, and your identity uncontaminated by ego. The world cannot cheer what it cannot control, and it cannot control someone who no longer needs its permission to move forward. Your value is no longer a fluctuating stock market rising and falling with how others treat you, praise you, or perceive you. It is no longer tied to seasons of popularity or obscurity. Your worth has become a fixed, immovable truth, established beyond time, beyond opinion, beyond circumstance. This internal sovereignty produces a steadiness that cannot be shaken by rejection or neglect. Your hand becomes steady because your center is no longer external. Your heart becomes calm because it is no longer negotiating for acceptance. You can walk through the valley of misunderstanding, invisibility, and dismissal without fear, because you are no longer asking the valley to define you. You know at a level deeper than emotion that your worth was settled long before anyone formed an opinion about you. It was decided before performance, before failure, before approval, and before rejection. This is why the world's silence no longer feels threatening. It feels like space, space to breathe, space to hear God clearly, space to move without interference. Spiritual sovereignty is not isolation, it is liberation. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are, even when no one is watching, clapping, or affirming. And once this pillar is established, nothing external can truly own you again. Point 4, the alchemical power of purified speech. The fourth pillar focuses on the alchemy of your words, and this is not a superficial adjustment of speech patterns, but a deep internal recalibration of consciousness itself, because you are becoming a person whose language is seasoned with salt, measured, intentional, restrained, and carrying spiritual weight rather than emotional excess. In your everyday spiritual life, you begin to notice a natural fasting from certain types of talk, not because you are forcing silence, but because lower forms of speech no longer resonate with who you are becoming. Gossip loses its flavor entirely. It does not entertain you, stimulate you, or bond you to others the way it once might have. And instead it feels dry and empty, like ashes in your mouth that leave no nourishment behind. Complaining, once disguised as honesty or venting, now feels like a subtle leak in your spiritual vessel, a quiet draining of power that weakens focus, gratitude, and alignment. Through this refinement, you are awakening to a lesser-known spiritual reality. Words are not merely sounds exchanged between people, but vibrations that carry intention, emotion, and creative force, shaping both the internal landscape of the speaker and the external environment they are released into. Every word spoken plants something, either clarity or confusion, peace or unrest, faith or fear. The person God designed you to become understands this intuitively and therefore uses language as an instrument of healing, alignment, and creation, rather than reaction. As a result, you speak less. But when you do speak, your words land with unusual impact, not because they are loud or dramatic, but because they are clean, precise, and rooted in truth. People find themselves pausing when you speak, sensing that what you offer is not filler but substance. You are learning to sit with a thought before giving it wings, allowing it to be filtered through wisdom rather than impulse, discernment rather than emotion. This pause is not hesitation, it is mastery. It is evidence that your mind is being renewed and your inner world reorganized around awareness instead of reactivity. Where once your tongue may have been used to defend, deflect, or dominate, it now functions as a bridge, connecting the visible and the invisible, the earthly moment and the divine intention behind it. You're no longer speaking to protect an ego or prove a point, but to transmit clarity, calm, and alignment. By guarding your gates, what you listen to and what you release, you are actively shaping the frequency you live in, ensuring that confusion does not enter easily and distortion does not exit through you. This disciplined stewardship of speech transforms you into a vessel capable of carrying high-frequency truth without dilution. Your presence alone begins to soften rooms, settle tension, and bring perspective, not through force, but through the quiet authority of words spoken at the right time, in the right spirit, and often through the wisdom of silence. In this way, every environment you enter is subtly altered, not because you try to change it, but because your words, when they are finally spoken, carry the grace, restraint, and creative power of a life aligned with divine order. Point 5. The sacred integration of the mundane and the divine. As you transform, you arrive at the 5th pillar, the sacred integration of all things, a quiet but radical shift in perception that dissolves the artificial boundaries you were once taught to respect. You are moving away from the fast-paced narrative that insists spirituality must be dramatic, scheduled or confined to a special location, as if God only speaks in sanctuaries, temples, or moments of emotional intensity. Instead, you are awakening to a deeper literacy of the soul. You begin to understand that washing the dishes is a prayer when done with presence, that walking to your car is a pilgrimage when your awareness is awake, and that breathing itself is a sermon continuously spoken by the Creator through your body. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is a sober recognition of reality as it truly is. You are becoming grounded enough, attentive enough, and humble enough to see the burning bush in ordinary moments without demanding that it be on fire. This is the hallmark of the chosen one, the ability to detect divine fingerprints in what the world labels as boring, repetitive, or insignificant. When you stop chasing the emotional highs of spiritual ecstasy, you begin to discover the unshakable depth of spiritual consistency. That depth does not intoxicate you, it stabilizes you. It does not remove you from life, it anchors you fully inside it. This psychological and spiritual grounding allows you to remain present without effort. You are no longer living in the anxious projections of what if the future holds, or the heavy regret of if only the past were different. You are here, rooted in the eternal now, where every second is revealed as a direct gift from the source, rather than something to rush through or escape from. In this state, time no longer feels like an enemy chasing you forward or pulling you backward. It becomes a vessel through which grace continuously moves. This pillar quietly dismantles the exhausting belief that holiness must be achieved through constant striving, improvement, or performance. The stress of doing dissolves, and in its place arises the peace of being. You realize with a clarity that cannot be shaken that you do not have to earn holiness through effort or display. You are holy because you exist as an expression of the Creator's will. Your worth is no longer measured by spiritual output, visible devotion, or external validation. It is intrinsic, settled, and non-negotiable. As this understanding integrates, your life begins to move as a continuous flow of grace rather than a series of disconnected moments. There is no longer a sharp division between your spiritual life and your everyday life, because you recognize they were never separate to begin with. Your work, your rest, your conversations, your silence, your routines, and even your fatigue all become part of a single sacred rhythm. You stop asking where God is because you learn how to see. You stop trying to escape the present because the present reveals itself as the meeting place between heaven and earth. In this integrated state, your existence itself becomes a quiet testimony, not through words or performance, but through presence, steadiness, and peace. Point 6, the resilient softness of the heart. The sixth pillar is the cultivation of a resilient softness, a paradox that only the spiritually awakened can truly understand. Many believe that the chosen one must harden themselves into an unfeeling warrior, armoring the heart with cold detachment in order to survive the unseen battles of this world. But the person God is shaping you to become is learning a deeper truth. The greatest strength is not found in emotional stone, but in a heart that stays open even after it has been wounded. You are beginning to recognize that bitterness, resentment, and anger are not shields. They are weights. They do not guard the soul, they exhaust it. They slow your steps, dull your discernment, and restrict the free movement of the Spirit within you. As you mature spiritually, you are consciously laying these burdens down, not because the pain was imaginary, but because you finally understand that carrying it forward only prolongs its power over you. The divine blueprint written into your life calls for a heart of flesh, one that can still feel deeply, empathize sincerely, and love freely without fear of being diminished. This softness is not fragility, it is evidence of mastery. It means you trust God's covering so completely that you no longer feel compelled to defend yourself at every perceived threat. You are no longer reactive, you are responsive. You are becoming someone who can meet hostility without mirroring it, who can encounter cruelty without internalizing it, and who can remain gentle without becoming weak. This shift marks a profound internal authority. You are learning to be kind to those who are unkind, not as an act of submission, but as an act of sovereignty. Their behavior no longer dictates your inner climate. Your peace is no longer conditional. Your compassion is no longer ration. This is the moment where spiritual maturity becomes visible, because true authority does not need to announce itself through dominance or control. It is felt through presence. It is carried quietly, steadily, and without force. This gentle authority is magnetic. It draws others not because you overpower them, but because you disarm them. People sense safety in you. They feel seen rather than judged, understood rather than measured. And without realizing it, they are drawn toward the light that you carry because it does not burn, it warms. In this season, you are stepping into the role of a healer, whether you recognize it consciously or not. And a healer cannot heal with clenched fists or hardened hands. Healing requires a softness that knows how to touch wounds without reopening them, a sensitivity that discerns pain without absorbing it, and a strength that remains intact even while offering comfort. This is why your past trials were not meant to harden you, but to refine you. You were not tested to become colder. You were tested to become clearer. What emerges now is a soul that has suffered, learned, released, and chosen love anyway. This is not weakness. This is invincibility at its highest form. Point 7. The masterful surrender to divine timing. The final pillar of the person you are becoming is the masterful, embodied art of surrender to divine timing. And this surrender is not passive, weak, or indifferent. It is intelligent, mature, and deeply anchored in trust. You are consciously releasing the compulsive urge to hustle from fear, to force outcomes, and to rush processes that were never designed to be hurried. You are letting go of the anxiety that once whispered that if you did not push harder, strive longer, or sacrifice your peace, you would somehow miss what was meant for you. In this season, you are realizing a profound truth. The person God designed you to become does not need to compete, because destiny is not a race and purpose is not a marketplace. There is no competition for what was uniquely assigned to you. What is meant for you recognizes you without effort, without comparison, and without desperation. You are entering a state of restful activity where discipline remains, but panic dissolves, where effort exists, but strain disappears. You still work, you still build, and you still show up, but you do so from wholeness rather than lack, from alignment rather than urgency, and from peace rather than fear. This is the quiet confidence of someone who knows they cannot be late for what is divinely scheduled. You are beginning to trust delays, not as punishments, but as protections. You are learning to see closed doors not as rejection, but as redirection, refinement, and sometimes rescue from paths that would have cost you more than they could ever give. The seasons of waiting no longer feel empty. They feel intentional. You understand now that when God appears silent, He is often working behind the scenes, arranging the set of your life, repositioning people, removing distractions, strengthening your character, and aligning circumstances in ways that your limited perspective could never orchestrate. What feels like stillness is often preparation. What feels like nothing happening is often everything being arranged. This surrender becomes a profound psychological release, because it marks the end of your internal war. You are no longer fighting time, resisting process, or judging yourself for not being there yet. You stop measuring your worth by speed and your value by visible outcomes. You finally make peace with the pace of your life, understanding that growth has rhythm, wisdom has timing, and transformation cannot be rushed without being damaged. In this peace, anxiety loosens its grip. Comparison loses its power. The constant mental noise quiets. You know deeply and calmly that you are exactly where you are meant to be, not as a consolation prize, but as a strategic placement. You trust that the version of you being formed is arriving at the precise moment you are capable of carrying the responsibility, influence, and weight of that glory without being crushed by it. Starting today, you consciously exhale the need to control every detail, every outcome, and every timeline. You release the illusion that your worth is tied to urgency, and you inhale trust, steady, grounded trust, that the universe is not working against you, delaying you or overlooking you, but conspiring in precise, intelligent order for your highest good. Beloved soul, take another deep breath. Feel the truth of these pillars settling into your bones. The person God designed you to become is not a stranger. They are the truest version of you that has been waiting under the surface for the world to go quiet. You are an anointed vessel, a chosen light and a masterpiece in progress. As you go about your everyday life, carry this sobriety and this peace with you. Do not rush back into the noise. Stay in this flow of grace. You are protected, you are seen, and you are deeply, deeply loved.